Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Morality is the herd instinct in the individual. But what if that herd instinct doesn't come from society, from religion, or even from school, but from your own mother?" Welcome to slave morality, the kind Nietzsche warned us about. It's the morality of the obedient, the compliant, the agreeable. It's the moral code designed not for creators, not for kings, not for revolutionaries, but for slaves. And the terrifying truth is that most men are programmed into it from birth, not by tyrants, not by enemies, but by the person who loved them most, your mother. It starts early, before you even have language. You throw a tantrum, you resist, you assert a boundary, and instead of anger, you're met with something far worse, disappointment. She doesn't yell, she doesn't strike. She just looks at you with those soft, wounded eyes like you've broken something sacred. And in that moment, something fundamental breaks inside you. You learn that your authentic self, wild, free, chaotic, hurts people. So you adapt. You begin to filter yourself, to apologize for your impulses, to shrink your intensity. You replace your primal energy with politeness. You trade your individuality for harmony, and all of it happens under the banner of virtue. Good boy, nice son, such a sweet child. But what's really happening is that you're being shaped into something palatable, predictable, powerless. This is maternal programming, and Nietzsche would call it the first death of the man you were meant to become. Because here's the sinister alchemy at work. When your mother's love is conditional on your agreeableness, your entire identity becomes fused with obedience. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What will she approve of?" And that question doesn't stop with her. It infects your entire life. You start asking it with your boss, with your partner, with your peers, with the world. You become approval-driven, addicted to harmony, allergic to conflict. You might still achieve success, but only within the walls of acceptability, only within the boundaries set by others. You never disrupt, never dominate, never destroy, because you were trained to believe that power is dangerous and approval is divine. Nietzsche called this the morality of the weak, the ethics of those who cannot act, only react, who cannot create, only conform, who cannot lead, only please. And maternal programming is its breeding ground. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. A man is offered a high-risk, high-reward opportunity in another city. It could double his income, expand his career, transform his future. But when he tells his mother, her face falls. "But I'll be so far from you. What if something happens?" He feels a pang of guilt, not because the move is wrong, but because it makes her sad. So he declines. Another man dates a woman he loves. She's bold, brilliant, unlike anyone he's met, but his mother disapproves. "She's not like us. She doesn't fit in." So he ends it. He tells himself it wasn't meant to be. But what really happened is this. He didn't want to carry her disappointment. And then there's the man who works a job he hates, lives in a city he resents, maintains friendships that drain him, all because those choices keep other people happy, especially her. He's not free, he's not fulfilled, but he is approved of. And that, he thinks, is enough. But is it? Because while he's collecting gold stars from his mother, his boss sees him as passive. His partner sees him as weak. His friends see him as a man without boundaries. And deep down, beneath the layers of guilt and compliance, he sees himself as a failure. Not because he hasn't achieved anything, but because he knows he's never acted from his own center. This is the tragedy of the approval-driven man. He becomes a mirror of what others want, instead of a reflection of who he is. And he justifies it with the noblest word in the world, love. "I do it out of love. I don't want to hurt her. She's done so much for me." But love without boundaries is not love. It's submission. It's self-erasure. It's the morality of the slave disguised as the virtue of the saint. Power-driven men operate differently. They don't fear disappointment. They accept it as the tax of greatness. They don't chase approval. They chase truth. They don't negotiate with guilt. They confront it. They understand what Nietzsche meant when he said, "You must become who you are." And who you are cannot emerge if your every move is filtered through someone else's comfort. So ask yourself, when you make decisions, whose voice is in your head? When you hesitate to speak, whose disapproval are you imagining? When you shrink yourself, who are you trying to protect? And most importantly, what has it cost you? Because here's the thing no one wants to admit. The world doesn't care how nice you are. It doesn't care how agreeable, how loyal, how safe. It rewards impact. It rewards courage. It rewards those who can face disapproval and still act. And the maternal script, however well-intentioned, rarely teaches that skill. So now you have a choice. Keep being the good son, the polite man, the mirror for someone else's expectations. Or become something far more dangerous. A man who acts from power, not permission. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." And in that single sentence, he diagnosed the silent epidemic destroying the potential of millions of men. It's called the mother complex, and it's not a metaphor. It's a deep-rooted psychological pattern where a man remains, at his core, a child. Not in body, not even in responsibility, but in identity and autonomy and how he makes decisions, how he loves, how he lives. And here's the terrifying part. Most men suffer from it, but they don't know. Because the mother complex doesn't look like a problem. It looks like a virtue. It looks like a man who cares too much, who's too nice, who's devoted to his family. It hides behind compliments. It's reinforced by praise, it's rewarded by society, but underneath the gold stars is a man at war with himself. Let me show you the signs. Do you feel guilt when you succeed, like you're betraying someone by becoming more than what you were told was acceptable? Do you hesitate to take bold action, not because it's risky, but because you're afraid someone might disapprove? Do you find yourself repeatedly drawn to women who need saving, or who emotionally resemble your mother? Do you struggle with leadership, confrontation, or holding boundaries? Do you feel secretly resentful of the people who praise you because deep down you know you're living someone else's life? If yes, you are not alone. You're simply trapped in the psychic grip of the woman who shaped your emotional world. Jung called it the mother as the unconscious. Because for most men, she becomes more than a person. She becomes a template. Her voice becomes the inner judge. Her emotions become the reference point. Her needs become the law, and the boy who internalized her as God grows into a man who cannot think for himself. But this isn't just about your relationship with your actual mother. It's about the archetype she represents. The nurturer, the protector, the comforter, the emotional regulator. The mother complex embeds the belief that discomfort is dangerous, risk is reckless, and self-prioritization is selfish. So what does this do to masculinity? It neuters it. The man with a mother complex doesn't conquer, he accommodates. He doesn't lead, he waits. He doesn't initiate, he negotiates with his own desires until they fade into the background. He becomes what Jung called the eternal child, forever seeking protection, forever avoiding responsibility, forever looking outward for permission to be himself. This is the man who chases security over growth, who chooses relationships based on emotional safety rather than spiritual challenge, who lets his fire go cold because the heat might make someone else uncomfortable. And yet, he's celebrated. Society calls him mature, women call him sweet, his family calls him reliable, but none of them admire him, not truly. Because what they're admiring isn't him, it's his compliance, his predictability, his self-sacrifice. He becomes the emotional mule everyone rides while silently resenting the weight. This is the quiet death of the modern man, not a death of body but of will, and it happens slowly. He gets the job that's good enough, marries the woman who's safe, buys the house that's close to family, lives in the city that's familiar, has the hobbies that don't offend anyone. And then one day he wakes up with everything he was told he should want, and a soul that feels like it never got a chance to speak. Why? Because he's not living his life. He's living the emotionally curated version that keeps everyone else comfortable. And here's the brutal irony. The mother complex often forms in the most loving environments. It's not abuse that creates it. It's overprotection. It's the mother who gives too much, who sacrifices everything and then unconsciously expects a return, who emotionally merges with her child and makes her well-being his responsibility. And the boy, eager to earn love, internalizes the deal. If I keep her happy, I'm good. But that deal doesn't expire when he turns 18, or 25, or 40. It becomes his identity, his operating system. And the scariest part, he doesn't see it. Because it's wrapped in love, because it's rewarded, because stepping away from it feels like betrayal. But Jung didn't leave us without a path. He offered a solution, but it's not easy. It's called individuation. It's the process of separating from the parental psyche and becoming your own man. Not in rebellion, but in integration. It means facing the parts of you that were never allowed to exist. The anger, the ambition, the sexual energy, the desire to dominate your own destiny. It means risking disappointment for the first time, facing disapproval and standing firm, making a choice not to be understood and doing it anyway. And here's what you'll discover on the other side: that love built on dependence isn't love, it's control. That approval given to a mask isn't approval, it's performance. That the mother complex isn't just psychological, it's existential. Because if you don't escape it, you don't really live. You just perform, forever. So ask yourself, who's really making your decisions? You, or the little boy who's still trying to keep mommy happy? Because until you answer that question honestly, you'll keep calling your prison love. There are two men living inside you. One is the eternal child. He smiles when he's told to. He hesitates when others disapprove. He seeks safety, avoids conflict, and drowns his rage in politeness. He makes his mother proud, but he never makes history. He's agreeable, reliable, kind, and utterly forgettable. The other is the warrior king. He lives from principle, not permission. He knows who he is, where he's going, and what he's willing to sacrifice to get there. He causes discomfort. He breaks patterns. He disappoints those who expect compliance and earns the respect of those who recognize power. He's not reckless. He's sovereign. And the tragedy is this: most men never meet the second one, because the first one is easier to live with. He's praised. He's praised. He's safe. But safety was never the point of your life. Growth was. And every transformation story, every myth, every epic, every biography of greatness begins the same way, with a man who must leave the comforts of home to discover who he really is. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, raised to rule an empire but never coddled by sentiment. His meditations are filled with reminders not to indulge emotion, not to live for others' praise, not to lose himself in the noise of public opinion. He ruled because he outgrew the need to be liked. He didn't just love Rome, he led it. That was his duty. Now contrast that with the man-child stuck in indecision, paralyzed by the thought, "But what will they think of me?" Or take Napoleon Bonaparte, hated by some, feared by many, but undeniably one of history's most influential leaders. Napoleon adored his mother, but he never let her needs determine his path. He disappointed her, confused her, worried her, and then changed the entire geopolitical landscape of Europe. Because greatness doesn't emerge from approval. It's forged in the fires of autonomy. And here's the pattern you'll see again and again. The men who shape history aren't the ones who stay home to soothe feelings. They're the ones who go to war with comfort. And often the first battlefield is emotional, because individuation is a blood sport. It's not about cutting ties, it's about cutting dependence. It's not rebellion, it's rebirth. You don't reject your roots, you outgrow them, and yes, that means some people will feel abandoned, misunderstood, hurt, especially the ones who've always relied on your submission to feel secure. But hear me clearly. Disappointing people you love is not a sin. It's a rite of passage. It's the threshold every great man must cross, not because he wants to, but because the mission demands it. You cannot become a warrior if you're still asking for permission to unsheathe your sword. You cannot become a king if your decisions are still filtered through someone else's peace of mind. This is the journey Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, and it always begins the same way, with the call to adventure and the refusal to answer it. Because comfort is seductive, love is warm, home is familiar, but destiny waits outside the walls. And one day you will hear the call. It won't come as a voice, it'll come as restlessness, as frustration, as silent resentment, as the gnawing realization that you're not living your story. That everything you've built, your job, your relationship, your identity, was designed to keep someone else happy. And then the question will come. Will I betray myself to remain loved, or will I risk discomfort to become whole? The eternal child chooses love. The warrior king chooses truth. And once you make that choice, everything changes. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. You stop asking for opinions. You start making decrees, not because you think you're better than anyone, but because you finally know who you are. You're no longer trying to be liked. You're trying to be aligned with your mission, your principles, your truth. That's the man the world respects, not the agreeable boy, not the reliable helper, but the man who can disappoint with dignity, who can walk away without apology, who can be misunderstood and remain unmoved. And here's the paradox: only by becoming that man do you truly honor the people who raised you. Not by remaining their child, but by becoming their equal. Immanuel Kant believed that what separates humans from animals is not intelligence. It's not language. It's not emotion. It's autonomy, the ability to make rational decisions based on principles rather than feelings. And if he were alive today, he would deliver a terrifying diagnosis. Most men are no longer fully human, because most men aren't guided by principles, they're guided by emotion, and worse, not even their own emotions, but the emotions of others, especially one person, their mother. Every time you silence your truth to avoid her disappointment, you are not thinking, you are reacting. Every time you make a decision based on what feels right to someone else, you are not a man, you are a machine following emotional programming. Kant called this heteronomy. Being ruled by something outside yourself. It is the opposite of freedom, the opposite of maturity, the opposite of what it means to live a moral life. Because morality in Kant's eyes is not about making people happy. It's about choosing what is right, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you made a decision not because it was popular, not because it was emotionally safe, not because it was expected, but because it was right? This is where most men fail. They confuse harmony with goodness. They confuse emotional safety with ethical clarity. But Kant warned us, emotional decision-making is the fast lane to moral collapse. Because feelings change, comfort lies, sentiment can be manipulated, but principles endure. And nowhere is this more dangerous than in the relationship between mother and son. Because a mother doesn't teach you to think, she teaches you to feel, to intuit, to adapt, to soften. And in moderation, that's valuable. But when it becomes the default lens for your entire life, it turns you into an emotional slave. You don't ask, what's true? You ask, what will keep her calm? You don't ask, what do I want? You ask, what will keep me from feeling guilty? You don't ask, what matters most? You ask, what's going to avoid conflict? This is the man who leads companies based on consensus, not vision. The man who enters relationships seeking emotional approval instead of shared purpose. The man who builds a life designed to be smooth, not significant. And then he wonders why no one respects him. Because people don't respect comfort seekers. They respect truth tellers, boundary setters, men who are emotionally grounded enough to say, I know this hurts you, but this is what must be done. That's rational autonomy. And that's where Kant's most powerful idea enters the frame. The categorical imperative. He said before making any moral choice, ask yourself this: what if everyone in the world acted the way I'm about to act? Could that behavior be universalized without contradiction? Now apply that to the mother complex. What if every man sacrificed his mission to avoid his mother's disappointment? What if every man stayed emotionally dependent out of guilt? What if every man avoided truth because truth might cause discomfort? The result would be catastrophic, not just for those men, but for civilization itself. There would be no innovation, no boundaries, no moral courage, no difficult conversations, just a culture of men ruled by emotion, playing nice, staying small, calling it love. And here's the deeper danger. Once you surrender your autonomy in one area, it becomes a pattern. You surrender it at work to avoid judgment. You surrender it in relationships to avoid conflict. You surrender it socially to avoid exclusion. You live in a web of silent compromises, each one justifiable, each one defensible, and each one deadly to your selfhood. This is the death Kant was trying to prevent. The death of rational man, the rise of emotional man, a man who lives to make others feel okay at the cost of his own clarity, his own truth, his own life. So ask yourself again, are your decisions based on reason or on reaction? Are you the architect of your life or the emotional caretaker of everyone else's? Because the uncomfortable truth is this: if you need people to feel good in order for you to act, you're not free. If you need approval to pursue purpose, you're not sovereign. If you need emotional peace before you can speak your truth, you are not a man in the Kantian sense. You are a well-behaved animal, and that might keep your relationships intact, but it will bury your mission. Weak men don't just ruin their own lives, they ruin generations. Because a man who never learns to stand on his own, who lives for approval, who fears conflict, who avoids discomfort, doesn't just fail himself, he becomes the blueprint his children follow. This is the multi-generational curse, and if you don't break it, you will pass it on. You might think you're sparing your kids the pain you endured, but if you haven't escaped the mother complex yourself, you're not shielding them, you're transmitting it. Not through words, but through energy, through silence, through the way you hesitate when it's time to assert yourself, through the way you fold when someone disapproves, through the way you teach them without meaning to that being nice is more important than being real. Your son watches you apologize for your truth and he learns to suppress his fire. Your daughter watches you defer to emotion over principle and she learns that men can't lead. You don't even need to speak. Your presence tells the story, your energy teaches the lesson, your weakness becomes the norm. This is how the mother complex becomes hereditary. It's not passed through DNA. It's passed through behavioral mimicry, and unless a man breaks the cycle publicly, unapologetically, it never ends. But here's the trap. The world rewards your weakness. Society gives you praise for staying quiet, for being agreeable, for putting others first. They call it maturity, compassion, selflessness. But that praise is a poison apple. Sweet on the surface, toxic at the core, because while you're being celebrated, your children are inheriting your limitations. And if enough men in a generation choose comfort over confrontation, approval over principle, harmony over truth, society begins to unravel. Think about what happens when no man is willing to say no. No to chaos, no to emotional manipulation, no to inherited dysfunction. What happened? Institutions collapse, families rot. Innovation dies, and all of it is masked under the illusion of niceness. This isn't just about psychology anymore, it's about culture, civilization. The strength of a people begins with the strength of its men, and the strength of a man begins with his willingness to become his own, not someone's echo, not someone's emotional caretaker, not someone's compliant little boy. So let's get this clear. Breaking the mother complex is not betrayal, it's evolution. It's not about rejection. It's about transformation. The child who grows into a man must, by necessity, outgrow the hand that held him. That's not cruelty, that's nature, that's growth. Because the man who cannot disappoint his mother will raise a son who cannot face the world. And one day, that son will look back and wonder why his father taught him to be safe instead of strong. Why his role model modeled silence instead of courage. Why he inherited a script of guilt instead of a map toward greatness. And if you don't answer that question for him, he'll carry the same weight, pass the same curse, until someone finally chooses pain over comfort, growth over gratitude, evolution over emotional fusion. Let that man be you. Let's be clear about one thing. This journey isn't about rejecting your mother. It's about individuating from her, about stepping out from under her emotional shadow, not to become ungrateful, but to become whole. You're not abandoning love. You're redefining it, elevating it, freeing it from the chains of dependence. Because love that requires you to shrink isn't love, it's a cage. And sometimes the cage built from love is stronger than the one built from hate, because hate repels. But love invites you to stay, to surrender, to disappear into someone else's comfort. And that's why individuation is the highest act of maturity. The moment you stop needing to be her good boy and start becoming your own man. Not in rebellion, in revelation. So how do you do it? Step 1. Boundaries without guilt. You don't ask for permission, you don't beg for understanding. You draw the line and stand by it, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. About your time, your mission, your integrity. Step 2. Mission over emotion. You prioritize purpose over peace. You let discomfort happen. You stop rescuing people from their feelings, especially her. If your greatness makes someone else uneasy, you don't apologize. You build anyway. Step 3. Autonomy over approval. You make decisions rooted in your own compass. Not her preferences, not her worries, not the imaginary lecture she might give. You remind yourself, her feelings are not your guide. Your vision is. This is the shift, from son to sovereign, from boy to builder, from reflection to reality. And once you make this shift, you'll feel something strange. A quiet strength rising in your chest. A calm authority replacing your panic. A sense of inner stillness where guilt used to live. That's not detachment, that's clarity, that's the foundation you were always meant to build on. But don't expect applause. Some people won't understand this version of you. They'll call you cold, arrogant, selfish. That's okay. You're no longer living for applause, you're living in alignment. And when that happens, respect begins to replace approval, authentic connection replaces guilt, and real power begins to grow. So here we are. You've seen the trap. You've traced its roots. You've felt the weight of generational programming pressing down on your potential. You know what's at stake. And now, the question, will you break the cycle or become part of it? Will you live for her peace or for your purpose? Will you remain the obedient child or rise as the man the world is waiting for? This choice defines everything that follows, and no one can make it for you. But if something in you awakened, if something inside whispered, "This is me," then you're ready. Ready to take the first real step into adulthood, into wholeness, into sovereignty. And it begins with 4 simple words. I choose individuation. Write it in the comments. Say it out loud. Let it echo in your mind the next time guilt rises, the next time you hesitate, the next time you feel the urge to be small for someone else's comfort. Because your mother gave you life, but only you can live it. And the world doesn't need another good boy. It needs you. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, if you felt the discomfort, the clarity, the truth, don't let it end here. I choose individuation. Say it publicly. Claim your shift. Declare that you're no longer living for approval, you're living for purpose. And if you're ready for the next step in your evolution, the tools, the mindset, and the psychological weapons you'll need to stay free, watch the next video. Because the man you were meant to become is waiting on the other side of this transformation. Don't scroll. Don't forget. Don't go back to sleep. Say it now. I choose individuation. And step into the life that's actually yours. What if I told you that the person who loves you most might be the reason you're failing at life? Sounds impossible, right? After all, she's the one who fed you, held you, protected you. But according to Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche, there's a silent psychological trap that turns many men into obedient shadows of themselves, and it begins with maternal love. Here's what most men never realize. The good son often becomes the forgotten man, the polite, reliable, emotionally available male who gets passed over, overlooked, and dismissed, not because he's weak, but because deep down, he's still someone's little boy. Picture it. 2 men walk into the same opportunity. One makes decisions based on truth. The other makes them based on what won't upset his mother. Only one walks out with respect. In this video, I'm going to break open the mother complex, slave morality, and the toxic approval loop you didn't even know you were trapped in. You'll learn why love can quietly become submission, why guilt is the most effective form of control, and why the cage built from love is often the one you never see. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll either keep performing in someone else's emotional play, or you'll break the chain for good. This isn't a video about rebellion, this is about resurrection, and it all starts now. Before we begin, drop a comment and let us know. What country and city are you watching this video from? Let's see how far this message is reaching. Loving your mother might be the reason you're failing in life. I know how that sounds. Sacrilegious, cold, almost evil. After all, she gave you life. She sacrificed everything for you. She stayed up late when you were sick, cried when you cried, and worked jobs she hated just so you could chase dreams she never got to. But what if I told you that this very love, the most sacred, celebrated, untouchable force in your life, might be the invisible chain keeping you small? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'm going to show you something disturbing, something that's been hiding behind your sense of gratitude, something Nietzsche hinted at, something Jung spent a lifetime warning about, the trap of being a good son. You know the type, always available, always agreeable, always putting others, especially her, before himself. He's the man who doesn't rock the boat, who makes choices based not on what he wants but on what she would approve of. He calls every Sunday, visits every holiday, smiles politely when she critiques his life choices. Everyone praises him. He's such a good boy. But here's what no one says out loud. The good son rarely becomes a great man. In fact, he often becomes something worse, forgettable. He blends in, lives quietly, struggles to assert himself in rooms that demand dominance. Women lose interest, bosses overlook him, friends use him, not because he lacks talent or intelligence, but because deep down people can smell that he's still someone's child, not a man, not a force, not a king. Let me paint the picture clearer. Two men walk into the same opportunity, a job, a relationship, a mission. One was trained to prioritize truth even when it hurts. The other was trained to protect feelings, especially hers. The first can make hard decisions. The second folds under pressure. The first commands respect. The second seeks approval. Guess which one builds empires? Guess which one gets chosen? And the tragedy? The second man has no idea why he keeps losing. He thinks he's doing everything right. He's polite, reliable, emotionally available. But what he doesn't realize is this. Love, if unexamined, can become a limitation. And motherly love, more than any other, is the most seductive form of bondage because it's not enforced with violence. It's offered with open arms. You're not threatened. You're guilted. You're not punished. You're praised for staying small. Every time you consider stepping outside the mold, her voice echoes in your mind. Not angry, just disappointed. And so you fold again. You shrink. You justify. You tell yourself, it's not worth the discomfort. I don't want to hurt her. But here's the truth no one told you. That discomfort you're trying to avoid, that's the price of greatness. The man who can't bear to cause pain to the people who love him will never create anything powerful. Because creation, true creation, always involves destruction of expectations, of comfort, of inherited limitations. This is the beautiful trap, a prison made of roses, a cage lined with velvet. And the key to escaping it isn't hatred, it's awareness. It's understanding that love is not always aligned with your destiny, that the person who gave you life can also, without meaning to, keep you from living it fully. By the end of this video, you'll understand why staying her good little boy might be the very thing that's robbing you of the life you were born to live. So ask yourself, are you living your truth? Or are you just living to make her proud? Keep watching. Keep. Right now, there are 2 videos on your screen, handpicked just for you. Click to watch them. I'm sure you'll love every second.